think we should be going on.
Welcome to the Holistic Kitchen. My name is Zane.
My name is
And
Abdullah.
my name is Iman.
So we're the Holistic Kids here to educate us kids from the inside out. We all want to make a difference. We all want to be heard. We also want to be informed. That's why we love the news.
So the best of all worlds is to make a difference. Be heard by working for a huge news outlet all at the same time. That would be a dream come true. And that would also be amazing.
But how'd you get there? It seems so impossible.
Well, today we have an amazing guest here to help us kids get to our dreams, all the way to even huge news outlets like CNN. So get ready to be inspired by Miss Marissa Miller. Marissa Miller is an experienced commerce journal and a journalist and editor currently full-time for CNN. She underscored health. Oh, can you still see us?
Yep.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, yeah.
For health, all things health, wellness, fashion, beauty, home, travel, with work published in the New York Times, CNN, NBC News, Vogue, and the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, Teen Vogue, GQ, Women's Health, SELF, Allure, USA Today, and so many more. As a certified personal trainer with a specialization in orthopedic exercise, she is always on the hunt for the most effective and safe fitness gear and apparel for all of for athletes, all levels. She also holds a certificate in based plant-based nutrition from Cornell University. So if she can't go grocery shopping with you on IRL, she will be delighted to make some food and cooking product recommendations from afar. And also beyond food and fitness, Marissa specializes in accessible and sustainable fashion, tech, beauty, and design, and whatever they each intersect with travel. So Marissa is also the author of Pretty Weird, overcoming imposter syndrome and other oddly empowering lessons. So thank you so much, Dr. Marissa, for joining us. I mean, Miller, for joining us today. We are so honored to have you with us.
Thank you. What a lovely intro. You've said it all. I don't need to say anything else.
Yeah. Well, we know you are so busy, so we are so incredibly honored to have you with us today. And we also know your time is very precious. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So how did a personal trainer and journalist become? How did you go from being a personal trainer to becoming like a journalist and going on to CNN? We would love to hear your story.
All right. Well, that's a big question, but it's a fun question to answer. So I always vowed to myself that whatever I do for the rest of my life, I want it to feel like I'm not working for a day in my life. So I've always loved reading and I've always loved writing and I've always loved working out and talking to my friends about fitness and playing sports growing up. So I thought, what's the best way to fuse all of my interests into one? So I started out writing a lot of poetry as a kid, writing short stories. My teachers told me that you can't really make money doing poetry. So I ventured into something a little bit more lucrative, which was journalism. The typical journalism that you're probably thinking of when you talk about journalism is not exactly what I do. I do mostly evergreen stories, which is sort of advice that you can kind of take with you on your everyday. So basically, I do a lot of product recommendations and I do a lot of how to's in terms of how to lead a better, healthier life, be it nutrition, fitness, fashion, home decor, travel. And where personal training comes in is that a lot of the content or journalism that I write requires an expert source. And having done so many sports over the years and having sort of this general knowledge and foundation of fitness, I figured, why don't I be my own expert instead of having to reach out to people all the time? Why doesn't the expertise and the advice come from me? And so, along with using my personal training certification to train people over Zoom on my lunch break, for example, I get to write about how to stay fit while traveling, or the best compression shorts to wear while working out to improve overall performance and enjoyment of your activity. While I was working for numerous outlets, so I started working for CNN about a year, a year and a few months ago. Before that, I was working for USA Today. And during my time there, I had this idea to write a book. The idea came to my mind one morning, and I did not allow myself to change my own mind. I started writing the first chapter, and 5 years later, my book was published. It's called Pretty Weird: Overcoming Impostor Syndrome and Other Oddly Empowering Lessons. So if you're not familiar with the concept of imposter syndrome, it's basically this phenomenon that was coined by two scientists in the 1970s. And it basically stipulates that you don't feel worthy or accepting of your success, and instead you chalk it up to a coincidence or an accident. And having been the weird one growing up, the weird one writing poetry and weird short stories as a little callback, I didn't feel that I was worthy of this journalism career that was taking off, so to speak. So it's a very common sort of psychological phenomenon that occurs mostly within women, but the general population as well. Those that are high achieving and very motivated tend to be most hard on themselves and tend to experience symptoms or the effects of imposter syndrome most profoundly. And the book is published everywhere, is available everywhere books are sold, Amazon included. And so far I've gotten a lot of great feedback on it.
Well, that is amazing. I mean, it's not that long. You barely hear about a book called Pretty Weird. I mean, you usually don't expect book names to be like that, but it's so amazing how you're able to find such a creative name and title for the book.
I was proud of that one.
Yeah. It's a really fun name as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just wanted it to be relatable. I made myself very vulnerable in the book so that others could not feel so alone in their own challenges, with their own feelings of self-doubt and, of course, imposter syndrome. But the book takes so many turns. I talk about, mental health issues like anxiety and depression. I struggle with an eating disorder, which again, is one of the reasons that I'm using health and fitness to sort of anchor my career a little bit as I'm in recovery. Yeah.
So obviously it's been such a long journey, and you've had a lot of obstacles to go over and tackle. So what are the biggest difficulties that you've had in your journey to be from being a poet to now becoming a journalist and an author?
This is a great question. I would say that my answer is twofold. The first part is that I'm based in Canada, Montreal, Canada, to be specific. And the sort of crux of the journalism industry is in New York City. So while, I can have all kinds of Zoom meetings and phone calls and be, on the best pen pal terms with my editors, there's nothing that really replaces that one-on-one sort of connection that other journalists in New York City are able to experience. So I've sort of felt like I've been on the fringes of the industry for the longest time. And if I ever come to New York City, I'm just a visitor who's there temporarily versus feeling like a real fixture or a mainstay in the industry. There's also sort of maybe cultural differences that I'm not aware of, that maybe I'm not clued in on by virtue of being Canadian. In journalism, as you may or may not know, it's extremely difficult to find permanent positions. most gigs and opportunities are contract based or freelance. And so up until now, this is actually my first full-time job that I've had in the 30 plus years of my life. So for the last several years, I didn't know when my next paycheck was coming from. And I had to basically hustle every single morning just to figure out when my next assignment was coming from. And of course, I've had anchor clients, which is sort of the idea of clients that give you large batches of work for a determined period of time, but those run dry after a while. And so I was always on this hunt. I was always on this sort of like hamster wheel, chasing the next opportunity, never really allowing myself to live my life outside of my journalism career. So now, interestingly enough, now that I'm at CNN, I'm able to sort of like focus on my family more and on my hobbies, and just kind of rediscover myself as a human being outside of being a journalist for like the first time in a long time. So that's been a luxury.
Well, that's so empowering, how you, for like, like you just said, you literally didn't know what you were going to be, you didn't know what you're getting your paycheck for 30 years. And then now you have such an inspirational job working as a journalist and giving other people advice, which is so empowering and so amazing for us.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to your book about imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
How can us kids know what we have imposter syndrome, and what can we do about it?
Well, I think the first step in kind of warding off imposter syndrome is knowing what it is, and knowing that it exists, knowing that it's so common, knowing that a lot of people in your field or in your class among your peers are likely going to experience it too. And so knowing that can help you not feel so alone in it, because I think that when you feel ashamed about something that you're feeling, it could begin to eat away at you, and you give it power. So if you talk about it with your friends at school, or wherever you like to hang out after school during after school activities, or if you happen to be vocal about it on social media, you'll find that you're building a community among like-minded people who are also going through these same challenges. Now, of course, the goal is to not develop imposter syndrome in the first place, but do know that it is a sign that you kind of take your work seriously. I find that people who have never experienced a shred of imposter syndrome in their life and sort of feel overly entitled to the success that they've been given sort of have maybe an egotistical way about them that can be sort of off-putting. And if it's not off-putting to others, maybe it can sort of stifle them in other avenues, in that it can cause them to lack motivation or put in a limited amount of effort into their jobs or various endeavors, because they innately feel so entitled to the success that they've gotten rather than earned it.
Yeah, and that's why I think. Do you think that syndrome is really holding back a lot of people from their, like, what people like to say, potential? Like, if someone was really good at drawing or painting, right? They could have used that skill to really benefit other people, or someone that's really good at cooking. They could have used that skill to really benefit other people, but because of this syndrome, it's really holding them back. Do you think that happens a lot?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think imposter syndrome in and of itself is energy. It's emotional, psychological, and spiritual energy. So if you're using that to sort of wallow in your own self-despair, why not redirect that and channel that towards something a little bit more productive, such as celebrating your achievements or empowering others in your field or otherwise.
Does imposter syndrome have anything to do with something someone else esteem?
Yeah, it does have something to do with someone's self-esteem, but usually we talk about self-esteem related to oneself so sort of who you are. Whereas imposter syndrome, we talk about when we relate to someone's achievements and their kind of external output. So there's a little bit of nuance there, but I do believe that with self-esteem issues comes a higher risk for experiencing imposter syndrome. And of course, both are so common to the human condition. I mean, show me someone who's extremely successful and I'll be able to point out a moment in time in which they didn't believe that was possible, or they still to this day cannot believe that their life turned out the way that it did, because it's just so beyond their expectations or comprehension. It's so natural. And I find that in a way, there's this kind of like really beautiful sense of childlike wonder that comes with imposter syndrome, because when I, for example, log on to my own LinkedIn profile and I look through it, it's still hard to sort of internalize that, wow, I've written for the New York Times, I've written for the Washington Post, I've written for Vogue. All these places that I worship kind of have my stamp of approval, and vice versa. Like they have my, like, it's kind of exciting to be able to live your life and constantly be surprised by the things that you're able to accomplish. It really keeps things fresh. It keeps you on your toes. It keeps you wondering, wow, what else am I going to achieve that is totally going to blow my mind and inspire not just myself, but others and amazing young kids like yourself.
So, what can us kids do to help us if we're dealing with imposter syndrome?
Well, the first thing that I would do, if you think that you're experiencing imposter syndrome, is to be honest with your emotions. You can share it with a sibling, with a parent, with a teacher, with a classmate. I guarantee you there's absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. It's a sign of real strength and tenacity to be able to articulate your emotions and the difficult and sort of complicated challenges that you're contending with. You're going to command a lot of respect from anyone that you talk to about your imposter syndrome, because it's showing a willingness to connect. And when you're vulnerable with others, it forges a connection and it forges respect, like I said. And hiding in the shadows with your imposter syndrome is only going to it's only going to magnify, because you're going to have no other outlet. And of course, you can also take the therapy route. There's absolutely nothing wrong with talk therapy. I've done it for many years. Eventually, I started running out of things to talk about. I got that all out in my book. But therapy is an amazing way to talk about your feelings of imposter syndrome. Again, talk to a parent, talk to a teacher, a trusted friend. Even educating your friends about what imposter syndrome is can maybe help them put language to the feeling that they themselves are having trouble connecting with or making sense of. And that in turn can be very therapeutic for you as well.
Yeah, so remember that if you're dealing with any kind of mental issue, to always speak out and to tell people so that they can also help you. Because if you just keep it to yourself, then it'll only just get bigger and worse, and it'll really affect the rest of your life. So always seek help. If it's from a loved one, if it's from a friend, then just ask them, tell them about it, and you'll always get so much help. And you can really benefit from just talking to other people about it.
I second that. Absolutely. And it's almost like a muscle, like in fitness. The earlier you start slowly, you start with whatever you're comfortable with in terms of disclosing. And eventually the truth just starts pouring out of you. I've always been so open and candid with my emotions from a young age. And I've been told, not just by friends and family, but by my wide reader base, that it's helped them make sense of their own emotions and not feel so alone.
So you have accomplished so much. Do you get anxious when you have all these deadlines for the media outlets you're working with?
I love this question because without deadlines, I'm anxious. I'm very deadline driven. It sort of provides structure to my day, to my life, to my lifestyle. So I really thrive off deadlines. I find that I'm sort of the opposite of a procrastinator. So, like, the moment I'm assigned something, I begin working on it right away, whether that's reaching out to sources for interviews or researching different products or just kind of playing with different angles that I think might work for a story. I find that if I begin working on a project right away, I get to take advantage of that endorphin high associated with like, you know, the momentum of getting the assignment in the first place. I find otherwise, you know, I'm really not a procrastinator, and it really breaks my heart to see that, you know, to see people sort of putting themselves in that position of having only, let's say, 24 hours to work on this massive assignment that they've known about for 2 weeks or a month or whatever. So I really love the idea of deadlines. They don't make me anxious at all without deadlines. Like, sometimes my editors will be like, "Oh yeah, just send this in whenever you get a chance," and I'm like, "No, give me a hard deadline so we're on the same page." It just provides structure and it gives me something to work towards on a more tangible level.
Yeah, like even me, whenever like if I have like a research project or something, I'll always love to get straight into it, start researching whatever I need to get done, and start putting all the pieces together so that I don't have to worry about it like at the last second.
That's such a great habit. And I mean, of course, don't get me wrong, the assignments in and of themselves sometimes incite a little bit of anxiety. If I'm having, I don't get writer's block too often. Alhamdulillah. But I think that in the off chance that I do, I'll create some distance between myself and the work. I'll take a walk, I'll do a Pilates class, I'll teach a class, I'll read a book, and it just sort of creates this distance so that I can, you know, come back to it with fresh eyes. And before I know it, I'm back in my flow state, which is sort of the way that writers talk about being in this sort of mental headspace where there's kind of a stream of consciousness going on.
So, with your past health challenges and all the stress you're dealing with, how do you take care of yourself?
How do I take care of myself? Well, the first thing that I do is I make sure to get a lot of sleep. Luckily, I have sort of created a routine for myself where I'm getting over 8 hours a night, because without that, I just find that my brain does not function properly, and I need every quadrant of my brain firing on all axes the whole day. So I make sure to get a lot of sleep. I'm constantly drinking water. I make sure to eat really well and really balanced throughout the day, so I'm not experiencing any sugar crashes or low blood sugar. I'm making sure to work out for at least an hour a day, which for a lot of people is considered a little too much. That's up for debate. I find that personally, it just keeps me feeling physically fit and physically strong. And when I'm physically fit and physically strong, I'm mentally as well. I make sure to get sunshine when I can. In Montreal, Canada, that's sometimes a little bit few and far between. But I try to do what I can. And it's kind of isolating for me, because my office is based in Manhattan, but I'm working in my tiny little office right now. So I make sure to have like a phone call with my mom or my sister, or like one of my friends, at least once a day, so that I can feel connected to other people. Because like I said, it's important to solidify your identity outside of your career and to continue to be a whole person outside of your job. Otherwise, you can't thrive. You're going to burn out. And that's basically it. Hanging out with my cats. My cats are the best coworkers I've ever asked for.
We love cats as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm allergic to them, but me and Zan love cats.
Cats are halal, you know.
Yeah. With dogs.
Yeah, that's why we don't like dogs. For me, they're just a little too kind of more aggressive. I think I like them more chilled back most of the time for cats.
Yeah.
One thing that I really took out from that I really loved from your routine is that you take lots of priority in sleep. And we a lot of times we've talked about sleep and getting exercise and drinking water on this podcast a lot of times, right? I think
Yeah.
at least probably once an episode will mention sleep or
Mhm.
exercise or water. So that's really amazing how you really prioritize it and you really make a big part of your routine in your life, because I know a lot of people that just like they try to not sleep.
Yeah, like they're like
They
more,
just hate sleep. They're more
they
workers.
think that like sleep will hold them back, but it's
Mhm.
actually will boost you up.
I also find we're sort of like living in this culture where it's trendy to just keep working
To
and
not
not
sleep.
sleep at all. And like, I don't know, it's gonna catch up with you one day.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and people will be like, I worked until 12. I got like 2-3 hours of sleep last night. They'll like be like kind of thinking that because you worked hard and that you lacked sleep, that's better for you, right?
Right.
But really, it's a lot easier, and I think it's worked a lot. It's worked a lot better for me to sleep more or to sleep the right amount so that you can actually get that work and have the quality in that work as well. Because otherwise, without if you don't put quality and effort into it, and then it's not going to turn out as good as if you actually slept and had the brain power to finish the task properly.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
So, what advice would you give us to help us accomplish our dreams?
Well, first, I just want to say that I'm so proud of this project that you're doing. I think you're on the right track, no matter what you plan on doing with the rest of your lives. The Holistic Kids Show is such a great launching pad for learning new ideas and connecting with professionals and just honing your skills, networking. So, with that, I believe no dream is too big or too small. Whatever you want to accomplish, you can. If you if you would have told me that I would be working at CNN when I was writing poetry at age 12, I wouldn't have believed you. But I never took my eye off the so-called prize. And I highly recommend you do the same. Do everything you can to go closer towards your goal, be it taking courses on the side or networking and reaching out to people in the field. There are so many steps you can take now to get you closer to your goal, and ultimately it'll help you feel a lot more fulfilled because you'll have no regrets in the way that you approached your goal. You'll know that you put in the legwork, you put in the effort, and if it doesn't work out, then again, there's no regrets because you did the work, you did what you could. So at least try. The journey to get there is almost as fun as being there itself. I had so much fun in journalism school with my 9 internships, many of them unpaid. That was the fun part because I was still learning. I was still making mistakes. It was a safer space to do so. And it really, I credit a lot of those early years to where I am now.
Well, you are so empowering, and we're so thankful that you were able to come on talk about your dream and your job with us today on our podcast.
This
Oh,
was amazing.
oh,
Where can people learn more about you and your work?
oh, thank you so much. Well, you can start by heading to my website, marissa-miller.com. So that's marissa-miller.com. My book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, everywhere books are sold. It's called Pretty Weird, Overcoming Impostor Syndrome and Other Oddly Empowering Lessons. It was published by Skyhorse and distributed by Simon & Schuster in May 2021. And you can follow my work on CNN.com. I'm on there every day, basically. And you can also take a look at my treasure trove of archives where I've written about everything from fashion to beauty for outlets like Vogue and Wall Street Journal and Teen Vogue, GQ, you name it. This has been so much fun, and thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure.
Our pleasure. So that was so empowering. Everyone make sure to follow Miss Miller on social media. Thank you so much, Miss Miller.
Thank you.
Mhm.
That's a good one.
So let's recap Miss Miller's key points.
Number 1. Imposter syndrome is when you don't feel worthy of your success and chalk it up to just an accident or coincidence. Us kids can be very hard on ourselves, and we need to believe in ourselves if we really want to get the job done and really have and really make the most of every single situation. So we need to first know what imposter syndrome is and how and know a lot about how it affects kids so we can prevent it by ourselves. And also remember that you are not alone if you have imposter syndrome or you feel like that you have any kind of mental illness or mental disability. So be honest with your emotions. It is a sign of real strength to understand your emotions. And also, hiding in the shadows with your imposter syndrome won't help you and it'll only hurt you. Also, therapy and talking to your friends and parents can really help you make sense of the situation.
Be honest with your create a routine for yourself so your brain can fix on all axes at all time. Make sure to get your sleep. Make sure to stay hydrated, balance your meals, work out at least 1 hour a day, get your sunshine a day, one a day. Make sure to stay connected as it's important to continue to be a whole person outside of your work.
Remember, you can accomplish anything you want to do, so everything that you can get closer to get to your goal. Remember, it's not just the destination, it's also the journey. So remember, no dream is too big or too small as long as you put your mind to it.
Thank you so much, Miss Miller. We know you are incredibly busy, so we are so honored that you can join us today.
Oh well. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Zan, sorry.
I'm Abdullah.
And I'm Imad.
Follow my family and I on social media, Holistic Mom D. And look out for my mom's book. She has written a lot. Kids need to learn for other kids. Please download our podcast on iTunes and leave a review so other kids and families can benefit. We need to work together to create a healthy future for all of us and the planet. Join us next week for another episode of the Holistic Kid Show, where kids are empowering kids. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.